Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Good morning, I'm Karl Fitzpatrick and welcome to Business Matters. Well, the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland has launched a COVID-19 working capital scheme, and one of the key benefits of this facility is that up to €500,000 is available unsecured. Here to tell us more is Nick Ashmore, the CEO of the SBCI. Nick, we'll be discussing the COVID-19 working capital loan scheme, but first, remind us about the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland and the purpose of the organisation.
Good morning, Carl. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. The Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, or the SPCI, is Ireland's national promotional financial institution. That means we're a government agency that focuses on supporting SME access to credit. We do that as a wholesale provider of finance. So we work with frontline lenders like banks and non-bank providers to make available to SMEs more attractive financing products. And they range from term loans, often through banks where we will share some of the risk on those loans, or through non-bank institutions where we provide them with low-cost liquidity and they pass on the benefit of that low-cost finance to their customers through invoice discounting, asset finance, hire purchase, leasing, that kind of thing.
So as soon as COVID-19 became a pandemic here in Ireland, you were very quick to develop a new facility called COVID-19 Working Capital Scheme. What type of companies are eligible to apply for it, Nick?
Oh, that's right, Carl. It's open to a very wide range of companies. It's any SME in the country and also any small mid-cap. So that takes you up to businesses with less than 500 staff. So that's the vast majority of businesses in the country. We have no real excluded sectors. The only main exclusion in this case is farming. Other than that, there are a few ethical concerns that we don't tend to support. We don't do distilling, we don't do tobacco production, things like that.
And what size of loans are available through the COVID-19 Working Capital Scheme?
So it provides for loans between €25,000 and up to €1.5 million. And as I said, they're available over 3 years. There's also availability of payment holidays at the start, so you can draw down the loan and then not have to pay anything back for the first 6 months.
Why 3 years? Why was that the term that was chosen by the SBCI in relation to this facility?
Well, we felt that in terms of providing working capital and liquidity, that's a reasonable time period. Ideally, I think most businesses, when they go for a loan, are looking for something over 4 or 5, 6 years. However, this is really an alternative and a support to overdrafts, which are often only for a year, and other short-term working capital facilities. So that's why we went with a 3-year period. It allows us to leverage the resource that we have over a bigger portfolio as well.
So what is the interest rate that is applied to this facility?
So the interest rate on this facility is a maximum of 4%, and I think that's what each bank is charging, but it's a fixed rate 4% facility in each case.
And are there any particular conditions that our listeners need to be aware of regarding the scheme?
Yeah, so they have to be COVID impacted to the extent of 15% of their turnover or their profitability, either actual or forecast for this year. And they also have to sign up to providing a short business plan and confirming within that they are making some changes to their business.
And is it an EU requirement that there has to be a level of innovation in the project?
There is, yeah. It's part of the EU funding that we're using to drive the scheme. However, having said that, the EU themselves are helping to clarify that the change in response to the COVID situation is regarded as innovation in that respect.
Now, one of the main benefits of the scheme itself is that up to the first €500,000 is unsecured. As a result, is there a high level of risk associated with these loans for the SPCI and in turn your funder in Europe?
We are taking on the vast bulk of the risk in these loans. So we're providing a guarantee on every single loan of 80% to the bank. And that's what enables us to drive the reduced security requirements, so you can get unsecured loans with no PGs, nothing, up to $500,000. And also it helps us to drive down the price of the loan, because normally loans at this sort of size and scale would be charged at maybe 6.5%.
So what does the application process involve from very start to finish?
It's a relatively straightforward process. There is an extra element over your normal bank application. So businesses come to our website at spci.gov.ie, and there they find the simple SPCI application form for eligibility, and that confirms to us that they are a business of the right size in the right sectors, and it tells us a bit about the business and confirms the innovation piece. That form should take 10-15 minutes. It's then submitted to our customer service operation, and they will turn it around in about 48 hours and issue an eligibility code. You then take that code along with the rest of your bank application and other information to the bank and apply for the loan in the normal way. As long as all the information is there and the bank confirms that they have all the information they need, they should be able to give you a response within 15 days at the maximum.
So on average, how long is it taking from the time that somebody submits an application through the SBCI website and for them to actually draw the money down?
It's hard to say at this stage for this scheme, but it varies also depending on how quickly the business then chooses to go from its eligibility code stage to actually making an application. But we've seen loans sanctioned under this scheme within a couple of weeks.
And does a business owner have to deal with their own bank for this, or are they free to talk to other banks?
Technically, they're free to shop around and talk to other banks. There's, and that's helped also by the low security requirement. But also, banks are up against it and very busy at the moment with dealing with many of their own clients. So, I think there's a need to understand that banks, it's not a normal environment. So, the key thing is to talk to as many banks and to shop around as much as possible. But I think it's clear people's own banks are probably their best bet at this stage.
And what volume of applications have you received for this scheme to date?
For eligibility, we've received over 1,500 applications at this point, and that's really over the last 3 weeks. And we've processed vast majority of those into eligibility codes. I think we've only had about 8 or 9 cases where we've not been able to issue an eligibility code.
Is the scheme sufficiently funded at this stage, in your opinion?
So we have 200 million of capacity within the scheme at the moment, and we are in the process of bringing forward another 250 million of capacity to top it up over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
And Nick, would you advise business owners listening to this morning's show to engage with a consultant through the local enterprise office's business continuity grant scheme, or through, let's say, Enterprise Ireland, in terms of preparing them for an SPCI application?
I would, and I think that's a very good idea. I think both of those schemes are very good options, obviously depending on the size of the business and the eligibility for the grants. EI has seen a good flow of applications for those grants, and they're very supportive of businesses getting that advice. I think the other place to check out also is Intertrade Ireland, and they have very good grant schemes to support advice as well.
Now, if anybody listening this morning is thinking that they do need finance, but they wouldn't be in a position to repay it over 3 years, is there other options for them through SPCI, Nick?
We have obviously financed through our non-bank fund lenders who are providing longer-term finance that tends to be around either invoice discounting or asset purchase. But we also have the credit guarantee scheme. So you can apply to the banks directly for this. It's also a guaranteed loan scheme. The guarantee isn't quite the same as the one on the covered scheme. It doesn't provide a discount, and there is a small charge of 50 basis points per annum on the loans. However, it is an 80% guarantee, and so if a business is lacking in collateral or is maybe a younger business with a less easy-to-understand business model, it qualifies for the credit guarantee scheme. And that's certainly something to consider asking for when you apply for a loan from a bank. And that allows for loans up to 1 million, and it allows for loan durations up to 7 years.
One other scheme that has been very popular through the SPCI also, I believe, is the Future Growth Loan Scheme.
That's longer-term funding, so that's funding for loans of up to 8 to 10 years. It's designed for investment purposes rather than working capital. We launched it in the middle of last year. Bank of Ireland were first out the door, and we saw a very strong take-up by businesses of that loan scheme. Loans are between 100,000 and 3 million. As I said, they're over 8 to 10 years. Similarly, also they allow for an unsecured loan of up to $500,000. And we've seen a strong usage of that scheme by businesses that may never have borrowed before because they tend to be asset light. They might be software businesses or people businesses where there's not hard assets to use as collateral.
And can businesses make applications for funding under multiple schemes? So let's say under the COVID-19 Working Capital Scheme, the Credit Guarantee Scheme and the Future Growth Loan Scheme?
Yes, they can. Generally, the only constraint is around state aid. So if we're using de minimis state aid rules, there is a limit of how much aid you can get over a 3-year period, but it's very rare that you'd see through 1 or 2 loans that a business would be close to breaching that.
Of course, COVID-19 is an evolving scenario. On that basis, is the SBCI currently looking at developing other schemes and other measures to be able to support SMEs?
We are, and we're also looking at further expansions. I mean, obviously, we've announced a couple of expansions of existing schemes, and we're working on either further changes or enhancements to schemes and potentially new products as well. I think it's important to kind of look at the crisis through the lens of a number of phases. We're very much in the kind of hiatus phase at the moment. We've been through the shutdown. Businesses have often, they've kind of stabilized themselves in an inactive state or mothballed state. The challenge is going to come round as and when businesses can start to resume activity. How do they deal with the overhang of unpaid liabilities? How do they deal with unpaid, debt service costs and how they've rolled up? So there is going to be a requirement at some stage for businesses to look at their liabilities and probably turn them out over a much longer period of time, and that we think is a key area for credit support in the future.
Okay, so the SBCI might be entering the space of refinancing existing debt for businesses over a new longer term.
We think certainly in the design of future schemes that will be a key element for this crisis, just given the nature of the kind of the complete shutdown that we're looking at.
Now, Danny McCoy, the Chief Executive of IBEC, joined us on the show recently, and whilst he acknowledged the great work that SPCI are doing with the loan facilities that you have on offer, he also felt there was a need in the market for cash flow through grant aid as opposed to through loan aid. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think the important thing is that businesses receive a suite of supports and a varied different types of supports. It's really a policy matter for the Department of Business and the Minister for Business to decide what the right solutions are at the right time. But I think it's important to also note that we are at a particular point in a particular phase in the crisis, and the Minister's made it clear that the supports and solutions brought to market will evolve over time and in response to the needs of businesses. So I don't think it's not fair to look at the current suite of supports and say, is that enough or is that not enough? It's more a question of what's the right set of solutions as we go through the different phases.
And finally this morning, Nick, what advice do you have for the SME business community?
Key thing is to take the time, maybe use some of the hiatus to work out plans for re-emergence and recovery, identify what your financing requirement is, talk to your advisors, get the advice, get the plans together, get the information together, and start looking for finance as soon as possible, because you need to have that in place before you need it rather than looking for it when you absolutely need it.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Nick Ashmore, the CEO of the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, and their guaranteed loan schemes will prove to be invaluable to businesses right across the country, so I would strongly recommend all Wexford businesses avail of these valuable supports.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.